Hi folks, Rory here and welcome to this very special video. This is our 200th video for our YouTube channel. The channel's been going 9 years, which is amazing. Firstly, you'll probably be seeing this out while I'm talking. Well, there's going to be a little bit of clips of some of our very first videos, which were from when I was in the wrestling company MSW. It's not something that gets brought up a lot because I don't really talk about those. And in a few seconds I'm going to show you my what aired for the TNA tryout that I had in full. I've mentioned on various podcasts about how I had a one-day TNA contract, so I figured I'd give you some context and the story of how that came to be and show you the footage because it's pretty cool. So yeah, so basically myself and my buddy Dave, we signed up to be wrestlers back in 2013. I was in much better shape now. My shape at the moment is potato, and essentially we started with this company in squad called MSW. Now at the time we were going every Saturday, and there was probably 3 or 4 of us that were there every week, putting in the time, and so there ended up being a handful of us that were doing videos together, which was mainly myself, Dave, our other friend Kev, another friend of ours called Geordie, and a guy that was there training called Joe. Joe went by the name Army Joe and stuff, and he was there most of the time, so a lot of our content was that. And the first videos we put on the channel itself were the ones involving Joe, which is pretty cool. He'd been doing it for a fair amount of time before us and such, and I think he stayed with there long after we left. Now, at first when we went there, they had like one champion, and myself and Dave, because we were like a proper tag team, within 3 or 4 months of us starting to do shows and full matches and things like that, we ended up as their default tag team champions and stuff. Although it was like not proper belts, it was stuff that me and Dave basically made. So we got a couple of the Mattel WWE Giant Penny style belts, and slapped a load of MSW and Team Venom logos and stuff like that on there. Got a few decals on. There's nothing particularly special, but it was awesome that we were champs. And we started doing loads of videos where we were leaning heavily into comedy, to the point where there's a video of me and Dave attacking Joe in a gym, and basically I got twatted by a part of gym equipment while we were in there, which was quite amusing. And we got like this other guy, I'm trying to think of his name off the top of my head. Basically his character was Union Jack, and he was pretty awesome. He also had a character called Outlaw, and we had it where he did like a return video where he appeared behind us and then attacked us and threw us out of a room. We had like a guy with a camera just following us all around this, what we did. It was pretty good, but for us anyway, it was a lot of fun. Obviously the quality of the videos and stuff aren't anywhere near as good as anything that you see today, but it was just something that we were doing ourselves, and we just had a lot of fun with it. Now over that time, and this is how the whole Team Venom media thing came about, because initially we were a tag team called Team Venom, but we had it where we were really prolific on Twitter. I mean, I was smashing it, and at the time I got to around about 15,000 Twitter followers, which was amazing. I mean, at the moment I'm like a third of that, which is still great. And we got to the point where there was a British wrestling magazine called Resurrection British Wrestling, and they essentially got me to do a write-up about myself, because they'd seen some of the videos and they wanted me to do something. So we did an article that covered all the stuff that we'd done, and they liked it, and they wanted another one for the next issue. And then by the 3rd issue I'd done loads of stuff for them, and then an opportunity came up to interview MVP for them, who one of my all-time favourites. And essentially it was a case of, I got told 2 days before, they just said to me, "Oh look, Rory really needs a favour, so if you can interview MVP, that'd be great. Hey, go to Manchester now in 2 days time, do you reckon you could do it?" And I was like, yeah, can do. So, because at the time I was on holiday, I'd literally just come back from being away, and I got the rest of the week off work anyway, so me, Dave and Geordie went to Manchester and interviewed MVP, which was amazing. We hit it off with him, we hit it off with the TNA press guy, and we ended up forming a really decent relationship with them, the press company that deals with them in the UK, SRX Consultancy, which has grown over the years, as you've probably seen on the channel. we've had loads of different interviews and they've all been pretty sweet. Including we've got the current WWE champion, Bobby Lashley, who's actually doing this in the attack, which is amazing. We've also got the TNA shows and things. Now, so anyway, I digress a little bit. We basically got it so that we were doing really well on the socials. We got a decent following. We had a core group of fans that kept commenting on everything and drumming up a bit of issues. Some of the fans basically started on the wrong people in MSW, who took offence to the entire group of us that we'd trained together. And by that point, there was myself, there was Dave, there was Kev, there was a guy called Russ that was there with us. There was our buddy Ben, who's on some of the videos on the channel, who hadn't yet gotten to go there, but he was lumped in with us too. And we basically told, yeah, no, none of you can come back. And it was where Dave had basically been riling these fans up online and telling them to give the guys that ran MSW shit for not having us on posters and things like that. And it just, yeah, I told him that he should be calming down and knowing his position, but it blew up in his faces and we were thrown out of there. So we had nowhere to train, so we started doing our own thing, which we called Team Venom Wrestling. All these interviews and stuff with TNA were happening at the same time, and essentially while we were doing Team Venom Wrestling, we got the really awesome thing come up with there was all the social media buzz. I got 15,000 followers, and I got a tweet came out to me from someone in TNA asking for me to DM them with my email address, so I did. I think it was Rockstar Spud actually, and then within a day I had an email come through, and it was basically an offer to go to the Manchester tapings for TNA's British Boot Camp 2 event, because I got a decent following online. They'd seen some of the stuff, they thought it was amusing, and they wanted to give me a shot. So I had this whole thing where I was going to go and sign. I signed a one-day TNA contract at first, which was pretty cool. But I had this tryout, and the tryout itself was, well, you'll see the footage in a minute. It doesn't paint me in a good light. But essentially, what I had was a really bizarre set of circumstances. You see, I was on holiday the week of the tryout, and originally it was, right, you've got to be in Manchester for your tryout you need to be there for 12, and your tryout's going to be at 1. Right, yeah, fine. And I say tryout, it was national TV and all that sort of thing, and it was on TNA programming, and so that was still pretty cool that it happened. But basically, I was away with my missus and kid, and at that point my plan was I could get a train back on the morning, go straight to Manchester. I got all my stuff with me, and I could, yeah, happily make that time. The day before I got a phone call saying there's been some issues with scheduling, we need to get you there sooner, so I had to cut my holiday short a little bit, and because of the time that I saw it, it was way too late in the day for me to get a decent train. So I think I jumped on a train in Western. I was in Weston-super-Mare in England at the time, so I jumped on a train there at something like 8:30 in the evening, and it gradually got me back to where I was living at the time, which was Burton-on-Trent. Got me back there for just after midnight. So I got back just after midnight, got into the house at 12:30, and because I needed to be at the TNA taping thing in Manchester for 9 o'clock, that meant that I then had to get up 3 or 4 hours later to jump on a train, well, to get a taxi to jump onto a train in Hatton to go to Stoke, and then from Stoke to Manchester, and it was just like this whole thing. So completely put out of whack, but I got there. So I got there in time and everything, and got put in this wrestling room with some British wrestling legends, guys I had a great deal of respect for at that point. Some things have come to light about some of them since then, which is quite terrible. But at that time, no one knew any of that. So there were people that I actually, admired their abilities and knew that they were better than me, basically. So the locker room consisted of current WWE superstar Mark Andrews, former WWE superstar Jack Gallagher. At the time, none of them had been to WWE, but I'm on about context of now. Rampage Brown, who's currently in the WWE NXT UK brand. El Ligero, who also went to WWE at one point. Babyface, Pitbull, Sam Smith-Downs, who is fucking awesome, one of my favourite British wrestlers. The guy, I can't remember his name, but he basically, well, he was a masked lucha libre type character, but he was from Stoke. There was Jurken, who's also British, but was like a rad Russian sort of character. And there was Chris Travis, who I ended up staying in touch with and considered a decent friend, like in the world of wrestling for a while. So yeah, so I was in a locker room with all those guys, and I was told at 9 o'clock, oh yeah, we're running behind, you'll probably get seen about lunchtime. So I had 3 hours basically before before the time that I had to get in the ring. I had 3 hours of watching these guys that I knew were better than me come and go. And like Jack Gallagher, for example, out of all of them, he got to WWE soon. He was it sooner than any of them, and he ended up in the Royal Rumble a few years back and things like that. But essentially, I was watching all these guys come and go, and then they were just like dejected. Jack Gallagher at one point was in tears because Samoa Joe had basically told him that he'd never make it anywhere, he didn't have the right look, and he ended up in WWE before him, which is pretty awesome. However, you know, Jack Gallagher was one of the people that some of the speaking out stuff was told to, so that's all sort of, those good memories are sort of tainted now. But yeah, so I sat with 3 hours with people that I knew were there. Rockstar Spud came in, he was dead sound, and did a few promos for him and everything, worked for a few people's promos. Simon, who was the UK press guy, he was there as well, so I chatted to him a bit. And by the time I got through, we were originally told as well that there were 4 people going through. By the time I got through, Rampage Brown, Mark Andrews, Chris Travis, El Ligero had gone through, and I was literally like the last one in the dressing room, to the point where I'm like, well, I'm definitely not going through now because they've picked their 4, and they're literally just going to be putting me in there as a formality, which was essentially the case. But what they did was, we'd all got promos worked out and things like that, and I went into this room that got a ring set up and a table which had got Gail Kim, Al Snow and Samoa Joe at. Now the footage that they've done is trimmed down to like a couple of minutes, whereas I was out there for like 30-40 minutes, something like that, doing various promos and stuff like that. And they basically, the first thing I had was Al Snow told me that he recognised me from somewhere, and I said, yeah, we met in London a few weeks back. You were really sound. You were kind enough to advertise our brand of wrestling, which was Team Venom Wrestling. And I've got photos of Al Snow in Team Venom Wrestling shirts and stuff from this event in London. And he like sort of paused, like thought a bit, and just went, well, I don't fucking remember it. So I'm there like, oh, you know what I mean? Like just sort of burying my head in my hands. So it was already a bad start straight away, and then I then got them all asking me for promos. Started doing the promo that I did the promo that I went there with, which was fine. And then after that, they started giving me some directions for promos and things like that. And yeah, and basically, so I've been given directions for promos, and I went through loads of them, and there was a point where my brain just sort of fizzled out, and it got to the point where what they used is annoyingly that part. So they skipped all the stuff leading in. You could tell there's cuts and things like that, and it basically got to a point where I essentially got buried by them. But they're asking me for a promo. I started getting the promo, and you can see from it there's a point where like my eyes literally roll back, where my brain is just gone. It's just completely blank, and I ended up completely flubbing it. But it is what it was. It was a great experience and stuff. And annoyingly, they were filming me for ages. They were filming us in the locker room. They were filming us before we got in there. We all did interviews before and after, all the things. And annoyingly, I think when they interviewed me afterwards and were saying, "I just think that when I was like, well, no, it's terrible." I think they gave them a really good off-the-cuff promo for that, but it didn't get used. And typically, I got off there, and Rockstar Spud came up to me and was like, "Rory, what the hell happened, man? You had this down before you went up there." I was like, on that much that I just had a proper mind wipe. So So yeah, incidentally, Rockstar Spud, friend of the channel and stuff, Drake Maverick, as he was known in WWE. I was fortunate enough to call him Jay. He was dead sound, and met up with him a few times since then. I've done a few podcasts with him and such. There's a few bits on the channel where I've been interviewing him. Yeah, so I met a lot of people there that I ended up being decent friends with. Oh, and I had a really cool thing happen after I left, because after my tryout and everything had gone to shit, I left and started heading to the train station, and I bumped into Grado, where he's just aimlessly wandering around in the rough areas of Manchester, because we were sort of out in the sticks where this gym was, on an industrial estate. And I was like, "Oh, you're Grado, aren't you?" He's like, "Yeah, I can't believe you recognise me," because at this point he wasn't internationally known. I knew of him because of ICW and the Insane Fight Club BBC special that they did. So I was chatting to him, and I says, "Are you here for British Boot Camp?" And he was like, "Yeah, I am." I says, "Well," but they'd already said that he was doing an angle for it, because which he was. He was literally turning up at these things, being thrown straight out by Al Snow. They turned it into a big TV feud on Impact for a while, which was pretty awesome. But essentially, I'd like come out, was all dejected, bumped into Grado, who was absolutely awesome, and then had 20 minutes walking back the way that I'd just come from with Grado to show him where to go, because he had no idea where he was, which was pretty awesome. So, and then I saw him a few times afterwards. He said to me backstage at the TNA tapings that we went to 6 or 7 months later, he says, "Oh man, I remember you. I can't thank you enough, because I probably wouldn't have got my contract if you hadn't have shown me where to go." So that was pretty sweet. But yeah, so anyway, some cool stuff that came out of it. I've got a really decent relationship with Impact. Obviously, I messed up this promo. It's terrible, but you know, I've waffled on long enough now and everything that I think you may as well just see it now and see for yourself. But it just wasn't good. It was like a lot of people in the British wrestling circuit refer to it as a way for Impact to sort of destroy the British wrestling scene for a bit, which it did to certain characters. I mean, like there's a guy, Alex Crater, who ended up as Cyanide in World of Sport, who he got in front of there, and they basically said to him about his conditioning, because he's a big guy, and rather than having him do promos or things like that, they made him do 50 burpees. And on the episode, when he plays back, he's like exhausted after 3 or 4, but he did like 50. So there's all things like that where they've trimmed lots of stuff down, and happened to a lot of people, and it just is what it is. But yeah, so without further ado, here's my awful TNA televised debut, because it's, you know, I was signed for a day. It was on their content, and it went out on TV. So yeah, enjoy. Feel free to rip the piss out of me for it in the comments. Hi folks, Rory here, and welcome to this very special video. This is our 200th video for our YouTube channel. The channel's been going 9 years, which is amazing. Firstly, you'll probably be seeing this out while I'm talking, but there's going to be a little bit of clips of some of our very first videos, which were from when I was in the wrestling company MSW. It's not something that gets brought up a lot, because I don't really talk about those. And in a few seconds I'm going to show you what aired for the TNA tryout that I had in full. I've mentioned on various podcasts about how I had a 1-day TNA contract, so I figured I'd give you some context and the story of how that came to be, and show you the footage, because it's pretty cool. So yeah, so basically myself and my buddy Dave, we signed up to be wrestlers back in 2013. I was in much better shape now. My shape at the moment is potato, and essentially we started with this company in Squad called MSW. Now at the time we were going every Saturday, and there was probably 3 or 4 of us that were there every week, putting in the time, and so there ended up being a handful of us that were doing videos together, which was mainly myself, Dave, our other friend Kev, another friend of ours called Geordie, and a guy that was there training called Joe. Joe went by the name Tsunami Joe and stuff, and he was there most of the time, so a lot of our content was that. And the first videos we put on the channel itself were the ones involving Joe, which is pretty cool. He'd been doing it for a fair amount of time before us and such, and I think he stayed with there long after we'd left. Now, at first when we went there, they had like one champion, and myself and Dave, because we were like a proper tag team, within 3 or 4 months of us starting to do shows and full matches and things like that, we ended up as their default tag team champions and stuff. Although it was like not proper belts, it was stuff that me and Dave basically made. So we got a couple of the Mattel WWE Giant Penny style belts and slapped a load of MSW into